The truck in my driveway wasn't mine. That was the first thing that didn't fit, the kind of loose screw my brain can't leave alone. It was a dusty silver F-150 with a bed liner and a dent like a fist in the rear quarter panel, the kind of dent you get from backing into a barrel rack. The late afternoon sun washed our little street outside St. Helena in that tired gold that sticks to the vines and mailboxes. The world was soft, sleepy, forgiving. I was not. I didn't pull all the way in. I let my rental idle at the curb, AC humming, while I stared past our rosemary bushes at my own house as if I had never seen it before. A wine country postcard, gray shingles, front porch with a slouching wicker chair, a lemon tree that never shut up about itself. Her lavender wreath hung on the door like a smile. The truck's rear window had one of those vinyl decals, an eagle perched on a crescent moon. I took a photo of the license plate without thinking, the way you blink when someone turns on a light. There were no shoes by the front mat. Lily had a habit of lining hers like ducks on the left side of the doorframe, ballet flats, white sneakers that never stayed white. The chair angled toward the front garden looked wrong too, pulled so it could see the driveway. I noticed this because that's what I do. My job is noticing the one alarm that chirped for 3 seconds at 2017 a.m. I am a control systems engineer, HVAC, refrigeration, process lines. I keep things steady. I'm the guy you call when something cycles wrong. When Lily and I first met in Los Angeles, she said I looked like I could fix a thunderstorm with a spreadsheet. It was a compliment then. I cut the engine and sat with my hands on the wheel. A bird threw itself out of the lemon tree. The neighbor's sprinkler ticked like a clock. I should have been on Highway 101, crawling back north from a client meeting in San Jose, not at home at 4:20-something on a Thursday. I had texted Lily at noon that I'd be home late and not to wait up. It wasn't a lie when I sent it. Then the last meeting canceled, and I decided I'd make a nice surprise of myself and our favorite pizza from the place in Yountville with the basil that actually tastes like basil. That was the whole plan. Surprise your wife with dinner. Try to be less of a spreadsheet. Maybe sit on the porch until the mosquitoes claim you both and call it romance. The front curtain moved. Not by much, just a kind of flinch. I could have told myself it was the fan or the dog we do not have. Instead, I saw my own face in the rearview mirror, jaw set like a ruler, and I understood I was already making a choice. There's the kind of man who barges in and the kind who doesn't. I did not barge in. I put the rental in drive and rolled forward until the truck and the house slid behind me. At the corner, I turned left, then left again, making a slow square until I ended up under the valley oak at the end of our block where the HOA keeps the mailboxes. I parked with a view of my own roofline over the hedges. Then I took 3 breaths like a person practicing not to drown. None of this made sense if you took it as a snapshot. Lily worked late all the time. That's the event business. She ran private tastings and corporate buyouts at a winery off Highway 29 in that stretch where the vineyards look like someone ironed them. Busy season was May through October. Late nights came bundled with her paycheck and the way she glows when a room of strangers says yes. She's the one who makes you feel like the party would be less itself without you. It's a superpower. It's also a way of slipping out of the house before you notice you're alone. Still, the truck with its ding and decal, the flinch of the curtain, the silence of the porch. On the second breath, I remembered the yoga mat. Not a mat exactly, one of those blue rolls that sheds little rubber freckles. It had appeared in the back seat of Lily's car a few weeks ago, curled up like a sleeping animal. One night, when she came home at 10 smelling like sandalwood and Sauvignon Blanc, she told me she was helping a friend at a studio in town, answering the desk during restorative classes. I get to take the last 20 minutes, she said, sliding her hands up under my t-shirt like the words were a promise. Savasana is my new religion. My shoulders were up by my ears all day. I had kissed her cheek and made a joke about worshiping properly on Sundays. The next morning, I found a new sports bra receipt in the recycling under an empty cereal box. Size I didn't recognize. Store I didn't either. Some boutique on First Street in Napa where everything smells like eucalyptus and cashmere. I'd noticed it the way I noticed that an evaporator coil is 4 degrees warmer than it should be. There have been other little noises in the system, a new passcode on her phone after 6 years of not needing one, a Lyft charge posted during an afternoon she was supposed to be on site at the winery, a Venmo payment to someone named MJ with a grape emoji, a night she came home with her hair up in a way I had never seen, telling me she was exhausted and starved and then ate 2 bites of the noodles I made and fell asleep face down on the couch while still holding her fork. None of these things are affairs by themselves. Taken together, they map a new route. But you can still call it traffic. I stayed in the car and watched my house handle the 4 o'clock light. My phone stuttered with a text from my little brother Nate. Chef, put soft-shell crab on the menu and I thought of you suffering for your boring client dinner. Tell me you get dessert at least. He lives 20 minutes up in St. Helena, works as a sous chef in a place that sells a steak you would throw your father for. I love my brother the way you love a childhood blanket that learned to tell jokes. I typed and erased 3 replies. Then I typed, can you talk? He called within a minute. I told him about the truck. I told him I didn't know anything and that I had just made myself not know more. I told him I felt like one of those wind machines in the vineyards, leaning over the grapes and doing something useful that still sounded like a scream. He didn't ask the questions I would have asked, doesn't do the detective thing like I do. Nate deals in heat and salt and timing. He knows that information is like a sauce that can split if you stir it too much. He said, "Do you want to come here?" And then when I didn't answer, he said, "Do you want to not be alone?" "I want to go back in time and be more fun at parties," I said. "I want to not be the kind of guy who photographs a truck." "Too late," he said. "Come up. We'll sit in the back and you can look at the prep list and feel superior." I drove to his restaurant and sat on a milk crate by the back door with a paper cup of staff coffee that tasted like the inside of a drum. He let me hold the sheet with station checklists, and I ran my finger down the line items like prayer beads. He didn't say a fare, he said weird, which is kinder. When he went in to fire a ticket, I pulled the photo of the license plate up on my phone and stared at it like it owed me money. Lily texted at 5,504 tree. "Just saw this. Long day. Are you home yet? I'm still at the winery. San Jose was brutal." It was a test I had already failed. I typed, "Still in San Jose, might stay over, traffic is a joke." I watched the bubbles appear and disappear. She sent a heart and a "get some rest." Then, 5 minutes later, a photo of an empty event space with candles and hurricanes and a long white runner down the middle, the kind of setup that looks like a wedding even when it's for a bank's Q3 targets. "Long ones tonight," she added. "There are choices you feel the moment you make them. They ride shotguns with you for years. I made one. I decided I wasn't going to be the man who storms the house and demands names and shrieks in the key of righteous. I was going to be the man who does what he's good at. I was going to build a timeline." On a napkin pilfered from Nate's prep station, I wrote the date. I wrote 4:22 p.m. and Truckett House. I wrote the plate number again because it felt safer to duplicate it. I wrote curtain flinch. Then I went home to a quiet that felt staged and collected the usual data. Doorbell camera recording stamp, we motion at 3007, package drop at 3009, nothing since. Nest thermostat change. Someone set the temp down to 70 at 35 Lily likes it cold when she's stressed. Alarm not armed, laundry basket fuller than it was that morning. The blanket on the couch was folded wrong, like a stranger had been polite in a foreign language. The sheets in our bedroom smelled like detergent and something else I didn't have a word for. I pulled the pizza box I had bought in Yountville out of the passenger seat and slid it into the trash, still sealed. Then I called Nate and asked him if he and his girlfriend would like to go away for the weekend to Calistoga, because I had made plans for our anniversary next month that I wanted to test drive. Our anniversary isn't until August, but I said it in a way that sounded like me trying and not like me staking out a battlefield. He said, "We cannot afford whatever you're offering," and I said, "It's already paid for, you'd be doing me a kindness." And he said, "If this is about a mattress, I am not having sex for you." And I said, "This is the worst thing you've ever said to me," and we were brothers again for a minute. The reservation was at the winery where Lily works. They have a guest house on the property behind an olive grove, low stone, a fireplace that eats birch logs like candy, a bathroom with a tub you could raft down the Russian River in. I had booked it as a surprise because I wanted to be someone who books surprises. Now I called to confirm a detail, and when the concierge put me on hold, I copied down the timestamp and the name of the woman who returned. Of course, Mr. Vation. "Hart," she said, "sing song, we have you for the Rutherford suite, arriving Friday for 2 nights." She confirmed the amenity list like we were 2 people anticipating joy instead of inventory. When she was done, I said, as carefully as you say anything into a phone that may one day be played back in a lawyer's office, "I may not be able to make it. If we transfer that reservation into my brother's name at check-in, that's fine, right?" She bubbled yes. I wrote that down too. That night, Lily came home after 10, which is normal enough that you can't call it a lie. She set her bag down on the counter and kissed me, soft, like we're good people who do good things. She pulled a half-eaten protein bar out of her tote and said, "I'm starving." And I said, "I saved you pasta," and heated it up and watched her eat 4 forkfuls. She told me a story about a corporate buyer hugging her after the speech and whispering, "I didn't know anyone could make barrel aging sexy," and she did a little mock shudder, laughed a laugh that used to be our language, and then she took off her earrings and put them in the bowl by the sink. They weren't the earrings she wore to work this morning, I noticed. I smiled. I asked about the new schedule for Saturday. Her boss had added a second tasting, right? She said yes and rubbed her neck like the day was still there. I might crash at Kim's Friday, early call. Kim is a real person with a real boyfriend who lives 15 minutes from us. Lily has stayed there before on late nights. The lie would be true if I let it be. I said, "Fine by me. I may have to stay in San Jose tomorrow too, actually. Nightmare with the compressor vendor." She kissed my cheek again, and there was a relief in her face that ached me. Relief that we were 2 ships paying each other the kindness of not looking too closely at the water between us. I did not sleep much. At 3, I was awake, scrolling through my mental list. I thought about how we got here, because that is a habit. Trace the loop and find the bad solder. We met in Los Angeles, 2 people pretending they weren't on dates with other people in a bar that served cocktails with rosemary stuck in them like flags. Lily was shooting a rooftop wedding. I was there because my college roommate dragged me to celebrate his new job and talk me into surfing. She told me she could see the light in people's faces before it showed up. I told her I designed systems that keep ice from forming where it shouldn't. "You're both kinds of wizard," my roommate said, drunk and not wrong. We moved north for her because wine country is where her work grows into itself. I can do my job anywhere. A grocery store needs to not melt. At first, it was good hikes on the Oat Hill Mine Trail until our calves sang, taco trucks that beat the restaurants like a dare, nights falling asleep to owls and sprinklers. Then the busy season stretched. Then my projects got weirder. Then she started to measure her days by how many people said yes to something that began with a no. You can love a person and still not see their loneliness until it points at you. Friday morning, I left early and actually did go to San Jose because I didn't know how to stay home and be normal. I took a photo at the site ductwork like a silver rib cage so I could text it to Lily if she asked. At noon, I drove back north and met Nate in the grocery store parking lot off Main so I could hand him the envelope with the reservation printout, the wine club card, and the note I had typed like a psychopath. Use my name at check-in. Take a photo of the registration card with timestamp. If asked, say I couldn't make it. Do not tell them it's you before you have keys. Ask for 2 parking passes and please take a photo of the numbers on them. He read the note, eyes wide, like I had given him a mission to defuse the souffle. Are we being petty or smart? He asked. If we're lucky, both, I said. Text me anything that smells weird. He and his girlfriend Liv drove through the olive grove at 4. At 42:02, he sent a photo of his hand signing a check-in card with my name and the concierge's name tag in the corner, blurred but legible. At 42:05, the keys in his palm. At 40,031, 2 hanging tags for parking, numbers facing the camera. At 40,037, the suite door opened to a room I had spent 3 months picturing with Lily inside it. Stone fireplace, arched windows, a shadow-cool hallway to the bath where the tub waited like a dare. I felt something under my ribs crackle, not quite pain, a wire arcing. At 5, Lily texted me, we added a VIP tasting Sunday morning. Might have to stay on property. Sat night to be up at 6. Love you. She had never stayed on property. It wasn't typical for staff. But if you're the person who sets the candles and arranges the hydrangeas and knows how to coax a CFO into preferring the Bordeaux blend, you can invent reasons. I typed, no problem, be safe, and I meant it. I wanted her safe more than I wanted anything else. I wanted her safe even from herself. At 6003, Liv sent a photo from the suite's patio, 2 glasses, the sun bleeding out on the rose. It looked like the brochure in my head. I put my phone face down and took the longest shower of my life and tried to rinse the ache out of my skin. Then I went to the kitchen and opened the blue folder I had started at 2 in the morning and laid out the papers on the table like a map. Thursday's doorbell logs, the truck plate printed out, the reservation confirmation with my name, the text thread with Lily, starred messages lined up like fence posts. A spreadsheet I had started that morning with columns for time, location, and detail that would seem insane to anyone who doesn't speak my language. I wasn't building a case for court, I was building a thing I could hold on to. Nate called from the suite at 8. This tub, he said, and whistled. Then, Liv thinks we should order dessert to the room because it is the kind of room that would get mad if we didn't. Eat it for science, I said. Take a picture of the ticket when you sign. You're frightening, he said, fond. At 9, Lily sent a selfie from what looked like the winery's staff kitchen, flour on her cheek like she had been making pizza that I knew she had not. She was tired in the photo in a way I recognized, eyes heavy, mouth flat but trying to curve. Going to Kim's after breakdown, she wrote. Don't wait up! She put a little white heart after it, the kind she uses for family and dogs. I stared at the photo. I zoomed in on the corner of the metal prep table where a key fob lay half off the edge, the kind with a leather tag stamped with initials. The letters were an M and a J. There are a lot of MJs in the world, and our Venmo activity is not court admissible, but you don't need a subpoena to feel nauseous. Sleep and I continued our separation. At 3:12 a.m., my doorbell camera recorded a moth frantic against the lens and, behind it, the empty street under the oak. At 6,000 treed, Lily texted, early start, heading in. My brother sent a photo of 2 croissants that looked like they had been painted with light. He wrote, for the record, this place makes even my anxiety pretty. Saturday morning in the Valley is a postcard that comes with a bill you don't see yet. I drove aimlessly for an hour past the Botine Napa Park entrance and the Bale Grist Mill with its oversized wheel and the blasé tourists, past the farm stand setting out strawberries like jewels. I ended up at the farmer's market in Calistoga because being around people pretending everything is fine calms me. I bought peaches and 2 jars of jam we didn't need. A woman from the rescue dog booth talked me into petting 3 animals with names like Waffle until I remembered I was not in the market for more responsibility. At noon, I parked under the eucalyptus by the winery's staff lot. Staff cars have a look scuffed and dusty from the back roads, usually with a wine key in the center console and a spare pair of flats thrown on the passenger floor. Lily's little black hatchback wasn't there. Neither was Kim's ancient Civic with the cracked bumper. The F-150 from my driveway was. I took a photo of it, the bed now cleared of buckets and a folded pop-up tent. I felt not rage exactly. Rage is hot and shows its teeth. This was cold. This was a freezer that thinks it's helping when it ruins everything. I didn't go inside. I am not a saboteur. I walked the perimeter and let the building talk to me in its materials. Stone that holds the night, wood that tightens in heat, glass that lies about where the sky stops. Through one window, I saw the back of Lily's head, her hair in a knot at the base of her neck, her hands moving as she spoke to a man I couldn't see. It was the choreography of her competence, the thing I fell in love with. I stood there and thought about vows and how people pretend the word forsaking is antique until it's a mirror. At 2, I went home and folded laundry. I set aside a stack of Lily's t-shirts that smelled like her life. I put my body in motion so my head wouldn't keep sprinting. I built a second line on the spreadsheet labeled potential explanations, and under it I wrote the reasons that would make me a fool: vendor meeting, team lift, ride share. Gone weird, she's planning a surprise for me and is using MJ's help. I am broken in the head and reading patterns into dust. Writing them down made them look smaller, but I kept them. I am willing to be wrong if it makes the world kinder. At 5:06 p.m., the doorbell recorded Lily coming home. She waved at the camera absent-mindedly, the way you wave at your own reflection. 10 minutes later, she was in our kitchen in leggings and a t-shirt, hair damp, eyes glassy with that post-shift, post-adrenal calm down. She saw the peaches on the counter and ate one over the sink, forearm under her chin like a kid, juice licking her wrist. "You are a good man," she said. Every so often I notice. "Don't put that in writing," I said. I wanted to touch her. I also wanted to interrogate her like a suspect with a lawyer present. I put the laundry basket on the table instead and made a joke about how we were married because our socks had achieved the detente. She said Kim's name twice in the first 10 minutes without me asking, like a person placing a prop for an audience. She looked at me from the corners of her eyes, gauging what would be safe. I made dinner and we ate it and watched half an episode of a show about people renovating other people's problems. At 90:20, she yawned theatrically. "I might head over to Kim," she said. 6 a.m. call. "Drive careful, please," I said. Her relief again, soft as a leak, moved through the room. She kissed me, longer this time, like the kiss was currency exchanged at a border crossing. When the door closed behind her, I stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet like a recording you play backward, hoping for a different message. At 10,007, Nate texted, "We stepped out to the patio to look at the stars and someone tried the suite door." He followed with, "We didn't open it. Thought you should know." My stomach dropped like a tool off a scaffold. "Did you get a photo?" I wrote. He said no, too fast. He described the knock, quick, then quick again, the way staff knock when they're sure they belong. "We turned out the lights and didn't move," he wrote. 10 seconds, then footsteps. I stared at the wall until it produced nothing. Then I pulled on a jacket and drove back toward the winery because there's a point where waiting becomes complicity. I parked in the same eucalyptus shade and watched staff walk in loops with radios and clipboards and that purposeful step that says there's always one more candle not lit. The F-150 wasn't in the lot anymore. At 11,006, Lily texted, "We're wiped. Kim says hi, setting my alarm for 5. Love you." I dared it. "What's Kim's Wi-Fi called again? Need the password? Want to check my laptop? Forgot I had one thing due." She wrote back, "You're impossible. We're using my hotspot." It was believable. Kim's router is a relic. It was also the kind of answer that closes doors. I didn't sleep Saturday either. At 4 in the morning, I made coffee so bad the spoon flinched. When the sun came up, I had gone through the past 3 months of bank statements and circled 8 charges that didn't make sense on their own, but grouped, formed a new weather pattern: a liquor store in American Canyon at 11,038 p.m. on a Tuesday, a bar off Soskel with a patio, Lily hates, gas station receipts when she always fuels at Costco, 2 separate Venmos to MJ with grape and moon emojis. I don't read tea leaves. I read numbers. The numbers said there was an explanation that didn't include me. Sunday was the day with the bright red circle around it in my head. Club tasting day. 2 seatings, one at 11, one at 2. Lily had pushed this one hard all week, new release of their Bordeaux. She talked about the lineup like you talk about a wedding party. She loves days like this because they feel like performance and communion at once. The plan I'd been making in my head since the truck appeared was ugly in a way that made me sick with myself, and still I kept polishing it. I would not go to war in our kitchen where everything we'd ever eaten would become evidence. I would let the place she loved most hold us all in its bright floral mouth. And I would not scream. I would not use names like knives. I would make a phone call on speaker and let the timing do what timing does in kitchens and in theaters and in rooms where people buy wine with stories on the label. At 9:30 a.m., Nate and Liv checked out of the suite and returned the keys. He sent photos without me asking. The checkout timestamp, the minibar inventory, untouched except for the chocolate he ate at midnight, the parking tags on the concierge desk. At 10:30, I parked in the visitor lot under an oak that has watched more confessions than a church. I wore a button-down I hate and sunglasses that made me feel like someone else. I walked toward the tasting room like a customer, like a man who came to chorus his O's and ahs on cue. Lily saw me before I saw her. She's trained to see people the second they become shadows at the edge of a door. There was a microsecond of disorientation on her face, like someone flicked the lights wrong. Then the smile arrived, professional and then personal. She touched my arm like I was an unexpected upgrade. "I thought you were in San Jose," she said, and kissed my cheek in front of 2 women from Walnut Creek who looked like they had opinions about velvet pumpkins. "Meet me at noon," I said. 15 minutes. Her eyes flicked left, right, measuring. "She's always calculating the room." She nodded. "Noon," she said, and her throat moved when she swallowed like she had just put something too big in her mouth. "I have the 11 o'clock seated. You'll be in good hands with Marco." Marco, the lead pourer, led me to the bar like I wasn't a landslide in shoes. He watched me taste and told me about the vintage and the drought and the miracle of September rain. I nodded and said the right words, cherry and cedar, and lift on the finish. I watched the door. At 11,038, the man with the F-150 walked in. He looked like truck owners in this part of California. Look, if they spend their days selling oak barrels to people who say no's, without ironing, clean jeans, clean boots, a tan at the collarbone, handsome in that easy way that suggests he has never walked into a room where people wanted him to fail. He had a scar that sweetened his mouth, and when he laughed, you could hear that he laughed a lot. He wore a wedding ring. He greeted Lily like someone who has learned how to greet carefully. They didn't touch. That's how you know it's not nothing. People killing a thing don't touch it. I stood with my glass and let the facts stand with me. I had the license plate and the receipts and the blue folder fattened by printouts and notes. I had the suite my brother had slept in instead of me. I had my brother, who would pick up the phone when I needed the next step. I had Lily, who was avoiding looking directly at me like I might be too bright to admit into her eyes. And I had the name on the man's leather fob when he set his keys on the bar to sign a receipt, MJ. At 11:58, Lily met me by the side door that leads to the patio with the olive tubs. She looked at me like I had fallen out of the light. "We can do this later," she said, too quietly for anyone else, as if she could reorganize time and the sun would nod and shuffle. "I have 20 seated at 2. "We'll be done before then," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone crisp. It sounded like someone who reads out loud well and puts commas in where they go. Out on the patio, the olive leaves had that matte silver thing they do when it's hot. I set my glass down and took out my phone and put it on the table between us, face up, like a referee's coin before a coin toss. "I want you to sit," I said. She didn't. She put her hand on the back of the chair like it was a rail on a moving train. "I saw a truck at our house Thursday," I said. "It belongs to a man you work with. I've seen it here too. I know his initials. I have his plate number." Her face didn't change in the way that counts, which is everything. There was a flicker guilt, then calculation. She is quick, she is not faster than the facts. "You're embarrassing both of us," she said quietly, like kindness. "I'm trying not to," I said. "I did not make a scene in our kitchen. I did not bang on our bedroom door on Thursday at 4:20. I gave you 2 nights to decide what you were going to tell me, and you decided to tell me nothing. So I'm going to tell you what I know, and then we are going to call someone." She laughed then, one bitter syllable that tasted exactly like the time you bite your tongue. "This is insane," she said. "You're making a spreadsheet out of nothing. Out of me working, out of me being good at my job." "You're excellent at your job," I said. "That's not what this is about." "I stayed at Kim's," she said fast, as if the sentence might outrun the truth behind it. "I've been staying at Kim's when I have early calls, I told you that." "Call her," I said, and nodded at the phone between us. "Put her on speaker." She stared at me like I had slapped her with a napkin. Then she reached for the phone and stabbed at the screen, and the call rang, and Kim's boyfriend answered, groggy. "She's not here, man," he said after I introduced myself, and then, softer, "She hasn't been here in a while." Lily closed her eyes as if that would close the hole she had just opened. She hung up. "You're humiliating me," she whispered. "I'm trying to stop the part where I hate you," I said. "Sit, Lily." She sat. She did it like the chair might bite. I told her the things I had written down, not as accusations, but as items on a list. Thursday's truck. The yoga mat that had never seen yoga, the suite booked in my name, occupied by my brother, the knock at the door, the initials on the leather fob and the emojis on Venmo, and the way her eyes cut to the door every time it opened. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She did the thing she does best and tried a version of the truth that would make all of us less responsible. "It was a kiss," she said, and looked away, and then, when I didn't react, "A stupid flirt. These people flirt, the vendors. It's practically their job. I tell them to stop. I've told them to stop." "What's his wife's name?" I asked. She blinked. "Don't do that," she said, and there was a plea in it. "Don't drag." "What is her name?" I said, calm like a metronome. "Madison," she said, after a beat. "Her name is Madison." "Good," I said. "We're gonna call her." I reached for my phone. Lily's hand shot out and covered it like a snake. "You will destroy people," she said, and her voice had in it all the time she has used that voice to prevent a child from tipping a glass that cost more than my car. "They already did that," I said. She pulled her hand back like my phone burned. I scrolled, found the number I had found last night because there are ways to find people if you are the kind of person who freezes instead of screams. Vendor accounts, tagged photos, a bridal shower in Petaluma where a woman with the smiling, tired face of a person who believes in furniture had been tagged as Madison James North. I had not wanted to be this person. I had not wanted the tiny thrill of competence when the internet gives you what you ask. I pressed call. I put it on speaker and set it between us in the white sun. The ring was so loud it felt like it might summon bees. "Hello?" a woman said, wary and polite in that California way that can go either direction. "This is Madison." "Hi, Madison," I said, and the words felt like stepping off a roof in the dark. "My name is Evan Hart. I'm calling from Rutherford. I think I'm supposed to be meeting your husband for a tasting. I'm with my wife, Lily. I think there's something going on, and I don't know the cleanest way to say it." There was a tiny sound, like a fingernail tapping glass. "I'm sorry," she said. "Who?" "Your husband," I said, and suddenly could not remember the man's last name with a gun to my head. The initials. The leather fob. "MJ," I said. "He's on site. He and my wife." Lily stood up so fast, her chair slammed the wall, the sound like a bottle breaking in a restaurant. "Evan," she said, low, savage, "don't." And that is where I will tell you the strangest thing about Sunday at noon in a place built to make people feel like the world is a bowl of ripe figs. The air slowed. Time did a thing I've only seen in kitchens when a plate slides off the pass in slow motion and everyone moves differently inside the same second. I watched Lily's face, which I have loved in mourning and sickness and every nothingness in between, fold in on itself, and I watched her reach for the phone not to save us but to preserve whatever story she thought still had a chance of being told. I watched her, and I felt both like a monster and like a man washing his hands before surgery. Madison, I said louder because both of us needed volume. I think your husband is here. Can you come down to the tasting room? Right now would be best. I will keep this quiet until you arrive. She didn't say okay. She didn't ask how I had her number. She breathed in hard enough that the phone's little speaker made the sound of cloth against skin. 10 minutes, she said. Don't let him leave. Lily sat down again, like her knees forgot what they were for. She looked at me, and for the first time in all of it, I saw fear that wasn't about being caught. It was a human fear, the kind that makes you small. Why are you doing this here, she asked. Why not at home? Why not anywhere but here? Because you love it here, I said, and I wasn't trying to hurt her when I said it. I wanted the place to hold us to the truth. I wanted the part of her that does not lie for a living to sit with us in these chairs. She put her elbows on the table and pressed her hands over her face. The olive leaves shivered like something breathing. Through the glass, I could see patrons laughing and lifting their glasses toward the past and toward the future and not toward the present, which is the only thing that ever wants you to look at it. I felt my phone heavy on the table between us and thought of every pipeline I had ever tuned, every loop I plotted to stop the spike before it shook the walls down. This wasn't something you tuned. This was something you turned off and then rebuilt. I checked the time. 12,007. The tasting turned inside out without breaking. Marco did his ballet at the bar. The man with the ring and the scar lifted his glass and swirled, performed his competence. He did not look at the patio where his life was about to open its mouth. I didn't mean for... Lily started and then stopped, her throat clicking. It was supposed to be soft. Nothing you do is soft, I said. That's why I love you. She laughed then, not a pleasant sound, the scrape of metal on a pan. You love the idea of me. I have been auditioning for you for years. This, too, was a kind of truth. I could feel the part of me that wanted to hold it and set it aside for later when there weren't enough hands for what was coming. I looked toward the parking lot beyond the olive tubs and saw a woman walking fast in flats, face set to a purpose that had nothing to do with tasting notes. She looked like someone who volunteered for school committees because otherwise nothing got done. She looked like the person you call when the hot water won't warm. I stood up. I felt the creak of my knees as if I had aged 5 years since Thursday. That's her, I said. If you want to go, go now. I won't follow. I won't make a scene. I'll just tell her everything I know and she can deal with it on the other end. Lily didn't move. She watched the woman come through the door like a storm that has no wind, only weight. And then Lily did something small and human and devastating. She reached across the table and put her fingers on my wrist the way she does in crowded rooms when she wants to know I'm still there. Her fingers were cold. She said, please don't ruin me, in a voice I will hear on airplanes and in the produce aisle and in the middle of the night when the house is pretending to sleep. I'm not interested in ruin, I said. I'm interested in truth. Madison stepped onto the patio and saw us and knew, the way you know when you walk into a room and your child has a cut you have not yet cleaned. She didn't look at Lily. She looked at me and then at my phone and then at the door to the tasting room. Where is he? She asked, and I admired how she didn't waste anything. Inside, I said. Do you want to talk here first? She shook her head. No, I want to do it once. She looked at Lily. Do you want to be part of once? Lily picked up her water glass and put it down. She looked at me as if I might give her a cue. I didn't have any left. She stood up and wiped her palms on her skirt like a person walking on stage, and for one strangled second I loved her so much for her courage that I could have broken apart and made her a boat. Then we all turned toward the door together, and I slid my phone into my pocket because whatever happened next didn't need a witness more than it needed the truth to hear itself. We walked back into the tasting room like three unrelated people with nothing urgent to do. The air conditioning had that winery chill that feels like good manners. Marco caught Lily's eye from behind the bar. He must have read something in her face because he started an extra pour at the far end, drawing everyone's attention left. Madison moved like she had been practicing for this exact moment in her car, posture straight, breathing low, the way you brace for turbulence while still holding your coffee. I gestured toward the barrel room because it was closer than the office and quieter than the floor. Madison nodded. Lily's hands were flat against her skirt. I opened the door and the cool rose up. It smelled like wood and fruit and wet stone, and I hated that it was beautiful. I hated how calm I sounded when I said, "Can we have a minute?" To the cellar tech lining up thieves on a tray. He blinked at us, clocked the wrongness like a draft under a door, and took his tray somewhere else. MJ followed us in a beat later with a half smile he probably used on half the people he met. He had the tasting list in his hand and not a single doubt on his face. "Everything okay back here?" he said to Lily, and then saw Madison and his mouth didn't quite close all the way. She said his name, not loudly, the way you say a password you wish you didn't know. He put the tasting list down like it had become very heavy and very important. "Mad?" he said. "Babe, what are you?" "Don't babe me," she said. "Not today." I stood between the barrels and let my fingers rest on the metal hoop of a 2019 Merlot like a person putting a hand on a guardrail. Lily didn't look at me. She stared at the concrete floor as if the right crack might open a door into a different version of this hour. I called, I said to MJ. I'm Evan. This is my wife, Lily. I didn't offer a hand. He didn't either. We'd lost the window where people can pretend. Okay, he said, and you could hear the salesman in his voice choosing a response tree he hadn't needed since his 20s. Okay, there's been a misunderstanding. There's nothing going on here that needs this. Last night you tried a suite door at 10,007 p.m., I said, because I had to give myself a foothold. The suite was booked in my name. I had my brother use it. You knocked anyway. He swallowed. It was a small movement that looked like a man discovering that time is not a trick you can play both directions. He looked at Lily. She rubbed her arms, suddenly cold. I went to the wrong door, he said, too quickly. Delivery, he added, as if tossing a lifeline. Glassware. You don't deliver glassware to guest suites, Madison said. And you don't bring it without it being on a manifest. And if there was a manifest, I'd have seen it. Her voice had a tremor then, just once, like a road line that wasn't painted straight. She looked at Lily, not unkind exactly, more like a person who knows the exact weight of the thing you've been carrying because she's carried it twice. I'd like to do this once, she said again. Right now, say what happened. We can all stop pretending at the same moment. Lily's jaw clicked when she unclenched it. She looked at me as if I could still be the version of me who was easier to fool. Then she looked at Madison and tried to be the version of herself who fixes events with a sentence. We got too close, she said. I let something be soft that shouldn't have been. It was flirting, then it was kissing, a handful of times. She paused, recalibrated, saw that honesty was the only currency that wouldn't bounce. More than a handful. I thought I could end it. I thought it would limp away if I just stopped feeding it. I'm sorry. Was Thursday a handful, I asked, calm, like you keep your hand steady when you hold a hot plate. Her mouth opened, closed. Thursday, she said, and her eyes flicked to MJ like a compass. He came by to what? Madison said. To get a kiss in our driveway? Not in the driveway, Lily said, and clapped a hand over her mouth like she could pull the sentence back in. The sound that came out of Madison then wasn't loud. It was the kind of sound you don't make until your body decides it's done protecting you with dignity. MJ tried to step toward her, and she stepped back, one precise shoe length, the way you avoid an open trap on a sidewalk. Do not touch me, she said, clear as glass. Do not touch my life today. This is not fair, he said, looking at me, which was a choice. You brought her here, you staged this, you ambushed? I called your wife, I said, because the last lie always asks to be told in public. He blew out his cheeks and then laughed, the kind of laugh men use when they need everyone to know they're the reasonable one. What do you want from me? What's the number, Evan? You want to hit me? You want to... What? You want an apology? Everybody wants an apology. I wanted a lot of things that didn't fit inside this room. I wanted back Sundays and the way Lily used to look at mornings. I wanted the version of me that didn't catalog stickers on truck windows. Instead, I said, I want you to stop coming to our house. I want you to stop putting her into your schedule like a side dish. I want you to collect whatever you think you deserve and leave. This is my workplace, Lily said, suddenly hoarse. It's both of our workplaces. Don't make this a... It is already a workplace problem, Madison said, cutting clean. You left our bed on Wednesday night because you had deliveries at dawn. Did you go to a warehouse? Or did you go to a woman who tells you which candles need relighting? He flinched like the words were physical. Don't make it cheap, he said. You made it cheap, she said. You took the expensive part of married life and swapped it for a discount private tasting in a guest house we can't afford. Lily put her hands on the back of a barrel like it was a railing on a ship. Stop, she whispered, and then, to me, please, I'll talk to HR, Her voice failed, she swallowed. I'll resign, she said, the word like ice. The door opened. It was Marco, eyes wide, a hand halfway up in apology. Sorry, he said, and then to Lily, lower. Anya's looking for you. She says there's a VIP request. Lily's boss. Lily looked toward the door like a deer looks toward the tree line. Then she looked at Madison, who was breathing carefully like she wanted to give her heart a job. I am sorry, she said to her. I am sorry for putting you in this room. I am sorry for every way I made you small. You didn't do anything wrong. Madison's mouth trembled. She nodded once. Then she slipped her wedding ring off her finger like you'd slide a key off a key ring and put it in the tiny pocket of her jeans. I'm going to the office, she said to me. Ask for Anya. We're going to talk about vendor behavior and key access because men who knock on suites at 10:07 should not have fobs that work wherever they want them to. She looked at MJ. You can come with me or you can stand here and try to invent a story that crawls. Either way, not my problem right now. He swore low, the kind of word that doesn't help anybody. Don't do this here, he hissed. Why not, she said. You did. We all moved back through the chilled door into the bright tasting room in a little procession, the kind that would look like nothing to anyone who didn't know where to squint. Anya was a thin woman with a stack of bracelets and an attention that could slice fruit. She took one look and put herself between two tables so no one had to perform this on the main stage. Madison introduced herself and asked for a private space. Anya led us to the small conference room off the back hallway that smells faintly of coffee and printer toner. She shut the door. She offered water. Madison took it. I didn't. Lily rubbed her wrist where the phone would have been if she held one. Here is the situation, Madison said, and it took me a second to realize how grateful I was that someone else would say it. Your vendor, this man, has been pursuing and engaging in an inappropriate relationship with your staff. He used or attempted to use access to your guest lodging after hours to further that relationship. He was at a guest suite after 10 last night and tried the handle. He was at their house on Thursday while her husband was out. I am his wife. He is going to tell you that this is a misunderstanding. It is not. Anya didn't blink either. She looked at Lily, then at me, then at MJ. Is there any reason I should not call security and the GM right now and ask for an incident report? She said quietly. No, Lily said, even quieter. There is not. MJ vibrated with an anger he hadn't chosen. This is a witch hunt, he said. This is insane. I'm a vendor, not an employee. Your policies include vendor conduct on property, Anya said crisply, and guest safety, and key control, and employee well-being. Sit down or don't, but stop talking unless you are answering a direct question. She turned to Lily. Do you feel safe at work? Yes, Lily said, and then, I did. Her face reddened. I will, once this is dealt with. Thank you, Anya said. She turned to me. You are her husband? Yes, I said. I'm not here to burn the place down. I'm here because things that were supposed to stay private already got here without me. We keep a clean house, Anya said. Give me 10 minutes. She left. The room was suddenly small. Madison put her water down and crossed her legs and studied her knee like a thing. I am going to go home and pack a bag, she said to no one and everyone. I am going to go to my sister's house and I am going to cry until I am empty enough to sleep. Tomorrow I am going to call a lawyer. On Tuesday I am going to call a therapist and use all my co-pays. I am telling you this out loud so my body remembers the order. Mad, MJ started. Michael, she said, stop. You don't get my attention for free anymore. He slumped in his chair and stared at the table. Lily stared at her hands like they were a new species. I stared at the laminated floor plan on the wall that showed all the exits. If you give someone a diagram long enough, they will find their way out. Security came, soft-voiced, and the GM, a man whose smile lines had long since pushed out anything else. Anya gave a stripped-down version of what we'd said, no adjectives, just nouns and verbs. The GM asked 2 questions that sounded like they'd been rehearsed for years. Is anyone in immediate danger? And is there anyone we need to call? When we said no and no, he turned to MJ and asked for his access fob. MJ put it on the table with a little quap that sounded petulant. The GM slid it into an envelope with a practiced hand. He told Madison he would call her by end of day with a written incident number. He told Lily she would go home and not return until she had met with HR. He told me thank you for bringing this forward and that they would handle it and that he was sorry in the way that bosses say sorry in fluorescent light. We left the office in a staggered way. Madison walked past me and touched my forearm. Once, not a squeeze, not a hug, just a brief human acknowledgement that we had chosen something hard and gotten through 10 minutes of it without dying. Thank you, she said. That night I slept for 4 hours in a row for the first time since the truck. When I woke up, I didn't know where I was for a second, and then I recognized the ceiling we'd painted a shade too white and the sound of the lemon tree needling the window. Lily wasn't in the bed. She was on the porch in a hoodie, knees to her chest, looking out at the street like the road might answer her. I sat down 2 chairs away. The space was polite. The morning was polite. The polite thing to do would have been to ask if she wanted coffee. I did not. I told Anya I'd resign, she said. She told me to think for 48 hours. She said they'd take care of their people. She said she'd seen worse and better. I believe her, I said. I don't want to be fired, she said. I also don't want to be the person who shows up like nothing happened and pretends at tastings that the light is perfect and the grapes have feelings. I don't know who that person is anymore. I don't know who I am without being good at this. You're good at 100 other things, I said, and then realized I couldn't list them in a way that would make either of us proud. She turned her face toward me but kept her eyes on the street. I love you, she said. I've loved you the whole time. I didn't stop loving you to do this. I just put something else next to it that made the original smaller. That's on me. You didn't deserve to be resized. I made it easy, I said. I gave you a husband who will always fix a thing. I made the marriage into a diagram. It's safer to flirt with someone who pretends life is improvisation. Don't absolve me, she said. You always do that. You make everybody reasonable and then you carry the math. She blew out a breath that made the hoodie string jump. I don't know how to be in this house with you and not be performing how sorry I am every time I set down a glass. That seems like a terrible way to live for both of us. There was a long, plain silence. Somewhere a dog did its one bark and quit. Somewhere a sprinkler gave up. We can separate, I said. We can sell, or I can go stay with Nate. We can divide the lemon tree by experience. She laughed a small, helpless sound. You'd keep it alive, she said. I'd forget to water it and then cry and say the climate did it. We are both extremely predictable, I said. We decided she would stay with Kim for a week because the world likes symmetry and maybe the name would become true again if we used it correctly. She packed the bag without looking at me, like eye contact would pull everything out of the suitcase and onto the floor. She stood by the door with her keys in her hand and said, I want to do better than my parents did when they broke apart. I nodded. I wanted that too. It is low as bars go, but I still had to duck under it with care. After she left, I cleaned the kitchen for no reason except that clean things don't ask you to feel anything while you're looking at them. I put the blue folder on the table and added Sunday's incident number on a yellow sticky, then closed it and slid it into the drawer with the takeout menus and the bag clips. There are tools for building things and there are tools for when something has to come down. I was done building. I didn't need the folder anymore. Monday, I called a therapist whose name had lived on a card in my wallet for years because our primary had said he was good at men like me. Dr. Patel put me in his next open slot and told me to bring no expectations and no spreadsheets. You can bring your brain, he said, but let it ride in the back seat sometimes. He was younger than me and older than the kind of man who still insists on watching YouTube to fix his sink. He said my name kindly and asked me to tell him the story without the parts I'd already practiced in my head. It took me the whole hour to figure out how not to sound like a transcript. He said, the thing about control is that it works until the weather changes, and I nodded like he had told me about refrigeration, not marriage. He said, you did something very hard in a way that will let you sleep later, which was the only validation I didn't know I'd been reaching for. He said, are you safe? And I said, yes, and do you want to be married? And I said I didn't know, which felt true in a way that hurt and relieved. Lily texted on Tuesday that Anya had placed her on paid administrative leave for 2 weeks while HR completed its process. She said MJ's company had suspended him from the route pending client conversations, which is the industry's polite way of saying go home and wait to see how fast your phone stops ringing. On Wednesday, Madison texted me from a number I hadn't saved, not asking for updates, just letting you know I'm breathing. I wrote back, me too, and then if you need the incident report number, I have it. She replied, Anya already called. She replied, Anya already called. She was respectful. Thank you for not making me ask. I put my phone down and went for a run I did not enjoy. I kept expecting an explosion that never came. There was no grand confrontation in the grocery store aisle, no dramatic Facebook declaration where people picked teams with emojis and flags. Instead, there were small, humiliating logistics. Lily came by to get mail. I left the house before she pulled into the driveway and texted that the spare key was under the lavender pot. A mutual friend sent a group text thread about a barbecue and then sent separate messages to both of us asking if it was okay to keep us on the same chain. My brother brought me food in containers labeled with swears and then sat on my porch and did not make me talk about anything until I wanted to. A week later, I met Madison at a coffee place halfway between our two neighborhoods because I had something that didn't belong in my house anymore, the leather key fob with MJ's initials I had grabbed off the tasting bar without thinking after everything spun down. It had fallen into my pocket like a coin. I didn't want it, and it wasn't mine, and I didn't trust the universe to handle it justly. She arrived 5 minutes early and ordered tea and thanked the barista like she had trained them. She looked like a person who had not slept much and was still capable of going to work on time. I set the fob on the table between us. Her face did that ripple thing again and then flattened into something more functional. Thank you, she said. She didn't touch it for a minute. Anya emailed me their policy and asked for a statement. She said there would be a vendor review and a compliance report. She said she understood if I didn't want to testify to anything and that they proceed on the facility side. I believe her, I said. She felt like a person who knows where the rules live. Madison tilted her head. You planned and you didn't explode, she said. That is not a common combination. Planning is my explosion, I said. She huffed a breath that might have become a laugh in a different year. I'm not here to trade war stories, she said softly, but if you ever think you're insane for making a timeline, you are not. The problem with people like our spouses is that they're very good at making a room believe it's still a room after they cut a hole in the floor. A timeline says, actually, there's a hole. We sat in silence long enough for an entire song to play without me hearing it. When we were both almost ready to stand and go back to our lives, she said, do you think you'll stay married? In the cautious, professional tone of a person asking whether you want your receipt. I don't know, I said again, but I know I don't want to be the warden of someone who's always looking for an open window, and I know I don't want to punish her for the next decade for the discipline I lacked in the last one. I'm trying to pick the thing I can live with and then live with it. She nodded like we were comparing recipes. I am going to file, she said, not to punish him, to give him a life where women don't have to keep moving their glasses on the table to make room for his stories. When Lily and I met with a mediator 2 weeks later, it was in a conference room that smelled like coffee and wood cleaner, which I am convinced is the universal smell of endings that are trying not to be cruel. We talked about accounts and the house and the lemon tree and the 4 ugly mugs we somehow both wanted. The mediator was a woman my mother would have trusted without asking why. She didn't ask us to perform our pain. She asked us to divide the stuff. We cried anyway, on and off, unhappily, and then gracefully, and then messily, and then not at all. Lily said she would resign. The winery put her on a different team for the remainder of her notice and gave her projects that didn't require a smile. Anya hugged her, and then hugged me in the parking lot one day when we crossed and said, you were decent, which I am trying to hold as something that is not nothing. Our friends reacted the way rivers react to new stones. Some flowed around us and kept moving. Some stopped and pulled and reflected us back in pieces we didn't recognize. A couple took Lily's side reflexively and then texted me 6 weeks later to apologize for the reflex. A couple took mine reflexively and then we never heard from them again because that kind of loyalty comes bundled with a story that needs you to stay the victim to keep it tidy. I learned to answer, we are doing the best we can and leave it there because the world doesn't need our colors to be brighter for it to believe in us. Lily moved into a small rental with a patio barely large enough for a chair and a plant. She chose a plant that doesn't need much water because she said she was done with needing too much of anything. She sent me an email titled An Attempt 3 months later, which contained a long apology and a shorter question. Whether there was a world where we date as new people who have known each other forever. I read it twice and then asked Dr. Patel what to do with something that honest. He said, honesty is the beginning line, not the finish line. And I love that because it didn't ask me to be brave or stupid, it asked me to be patient with myself. I didn't say yes, and I didn't say never. I said, I am not a man who can trust you right now, which is not a punishment, it's a reality. I said, I want you to be happy even if that happens half a mile away from me. I said, I'm going to adopt a dog because I am done living in a house that never learned to thump with joy when someone comes home. She wrote back, fair, and then send me a picture of the dog, which was the first thing that didn't hurt in a while. I brought home a mutt with one ear that stands and one ear that flops and a name that came with him from the shelter, Gus, as if the universe had been in on the joke the whole time because that's the name my brother gives every dog he meets. Gus learned the house quickly, learned my hours, learned that the lemon tree throws light at 4. He learned to sleep at the foot of the bed and not to rush the door when a truck goes by, because I still tense when one idles on our block and he doesn't need to take that job from me. He learned that when I stand too long staring at the kitchen table, it's his job to nudge my leg and break the loop. I saw Madison once more on purpose at a hardware store where we both pretended we were choosing paint. She looked like a person who had moved from one set of habits into another. She told me she had signed her papers and that the quiet after was bigger than she expected in both bad and good ways. I told her Lily had resigned and started shooting freelance again. Smaller weddings, warmer rooms. We both said we hoped we could like wine again without tasting the story, and then we both admitted that maybe that would take longer than we wanted. This is the part where I'm supposed to say what I learned, but learning suggests an ending. I don't have one. I have a practice. I practice telling the story the same way every time so it doesn't grow teeth. I practice keeping a timeline when my head tries to rewrite Thursday into something reasonable. I practice being angry without building a throne for it. I practice not letting the ugliest 10 minutes of our marriage be the only 10 I remember. I practice not fixing everything inside the hour because some hours are supposed to be unfixable. If you've made it this far hoping I chose forgiveness or revolution, I'm sorry. I chose something less cinematic. I chose to let the truth do its work in public once, and then to keep the rest private. I chose to become a man who can sit at a tasting bar and order the cheaper glass without tasting the past in it. I chose to become a person who puts his phone face down on the table because sometimes a person you love doesn't need your attention to be a flashlight, they need you to remember you have hands. If I had to give advice to the version of me who took the photo of the license plate with his heart in his throat, I'd tell him 3 things. 1, you cannot spreadsheet your way out of pain, but you can build yourself a handrail so you don't fall all the way down the stairs. 2, do not give your anger the microphone and a ring light. It loves attention and pays poorly. 3, the truth will not feel like victory. It will feel like fresh air in a cold room. Breathe anyway. What would you have done in my place? Would you have kept it private and asked for a confession behind a closed door? Or called the other spouse like I did and let the room hold the truth with you? Tell me in the comments because I'm curious how you draw the line between justice and spectacle. If this story made you feel anything at all, tap like so. It finds the next person sitting in their car staring at a truck they don't recognize. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, and share it with someone who still thinks just a kiss can't set a house on fire.